are typically named from A to M, like this. Again, from this A to M, they are owned from various companies. So you can see the complete list of the root servers with the companies which own that root servers on the screen. You don't have to remember all of them. You just have to see and understand that these are the service providers or the root servers from which we are going to get some information in order to process our domain. Now let's come back to screen. As discussed, we were searching for telesco.com. Also, I can remove this now. Now, when we are searching for telesco.com, the root server doesn't know anything about telesco.com, but it knows about the TLDs, which are top level domains. What is top level domain? If I talk about .com, this is our top level domain. .com, .net, .gov, .in, .uk, .us, .education maybe, .edu, we use them. These all domains are the top level domains of any website. So that means if we need to find out where telesco.com is, we first need to know which server is handling all the .coms. So in order to do that, our root server will give the response that okay, you can go to one of the TLDs which is handling the top level domain for .com, and the root server will return the IP address of that. Maybe this is the IP address, and from now we know that we are going to hit any TLD, top level domain, for our .com. Now from this TLD, we are again not going to get the complete IP address of the site. We are going to get the proper server or the names complete list of the root server in order to fulfill this requirement. If that machine breaks, then the entire system, the entire internet will break. Anyone in the world will not be able to use any internet services or any web pages for that matter. No APIs will hit because it all depends on the DNS. So one thing is sure, we need a certain kind of system in order to fulfill this requirement. That's why we have one of the most beautifully designed system, DNS. Let's start from the high level. So this is our machine which is going to use some internet service provider, and under this service provider we have something called as DNS resolver. So this DNS resolver is responsible for us to getting the correct IP of any websites or any domain which we are trying to process. In order to understand this clearly, let me take this and put it in a side so that I can draw more things onto our screen. So the first call it is going to make is to our root server. Now there are 13 root servers in this entire world. That means there are 30 companies who own 13 web servers in this entire world. They are not physically 13, but they are categorized into 13. So that means out of these 13, we are going to hit one of them and get the response. These root servers are typically named from A to M, like this. Again, from this A to M, they are owned from various companies. So you can see the complete list of the root servers with the companies which own that root servers on the screen. You don't have to remember all of them. You just have to see and understand that these are the service providers or the root servers from which we are going to get some information in order to process our domain. Now let's come back to screen. As discussed, we were searching for telesco.com. Also, I can remove this now. Now, when we are searching for telesco.com, the root server doesn't know anything about telesco.com, but it knows about the TLDs, which are top level domains. What is top level domain? If I talk about .com, this is our top level domain. .com, .net, .gov, .in, .uk, .us, .education maybe, .edu, we use them. These all domains are the top level domains of any website. So that means if we need to find out where telesco.com is, we first need to know which server is handling all the .coms. So in order to do that, our root server will give the response that okay, you can go to one of the TLDs which is handling the top level domain for .com, and the root server will return the IP address of that. Maybe this is the IP address, and from now we know that we are going to hit any TLD, top level domain, for our .com. Now from this TLD, we are again not going to get the complete IP address of the site. We are going to get the proper server or the name server or the authoritative servers which are managing all the IP addresses for our domains. Let's say this is the IP address of our authoritative name server, and from this we are going to make another call, which are our authoritative name servers. And from here we are going to actually get where our telesco.com resides, the IP address, which was 1928.38.41. And once this is captured through our browser, the IP, then it is going to make the call to telesco.com server, and it is going to get the web page which is desired for. I get it, this can be little confusing at start, so let me reiterate it for once. So whenever we click on any site, whenever we want to find any site, let it be telesco.com, it is first going to our service provider, internet service provider. Also, you can see it can go through router, and router can also have DNS resolver. So from internet service provider which have DNS resolver, this component is going to resolve all our queries for us and ultimately will give us a perfectly fine working IP address for telesco.com or any other site for that matter. So the first step is it will go to the root servers. What is root servers? There are 13 companies who own these root servers who doesn't know the IP address of your site directly but knows which TLD to follow. So from root server, it is going to check what is your TLD, top level domain, and in this case it is .com. Now as it is .com, it is going to get the IP address of the TLD which is handling the .com domain. So after this first call, now we are going to call the TLD which we get from the root server, and from this also we are not going to get the complete IP address of Telesco. We are going to get on which name server we are going to hit to get the complete IP address of telesco.com. So from here, we are going to get the authoritative name server's IP. And accordingly, we are going to hit our third and final call to our authoritative name servers. Our authoritative name servers are mostly can be configured in GoDaddy or Hostinger or any other service providers in your content application. And from these authoritative name servers, we are going to get the IP address of telesco.com. Now, in order to click one site, we have to do these three operations. This can be heavy, right? So this is only done first time. And the next time when you click on anything, it basically takes the value from cache. Now, cache can be stored in three locations here, or more than three if you think about it, but three are definite locations. The first is the DNS resolver can have the cache to have all the common IP addresses which we are going to take, or all the common domains which we are trying to hit. It can store it here. Also, on our system, we have two things. One is OS and one is browser. In both of these areas, we can basically add that domain and the IP address in order to get the details fast. So browser also maintain that cache. OS level also we can basically maintain the cache. And on our DNS resolver side, also a cache is maintained in order to get the details fast. Now, when we are at this topic, let me tell you about one more thing, that whenever we create domain name systems like this docs or subdomains, these all entirely creates a zone in the authoritative name server. That means telesco.com, including all the subdomains. So one zone can contain multiple domain lists, which will include only the domains specifically to that particular main domain. Okay, and through this, it is easier to get to the main domain. So in this case, whenever we are hitting the root server, we are getting the IP of TLD, again hitting the TLD, getting the IP of authoritative name server, and in authoritative name servers, we can have different zones attached to different domains. And in this zone, if it is Telesco zone, in that case, all the domains which are associated with telesco.com will be here. So if instead of telesco.com, if we are hitting courses.telesco.com, and from this, the authoritative name server will get that this is our Telesco zone, and in Telesco zone, we will get the courses.telesco.com IP address also. So yeah, this is it for DNS for now. I hope you understand it. If you get it, let me know in the comments. If you have any queries also, let me know in the comments. Have you ever wondered, if you see Zomato, if you see Uber, if you see Ola, if you see Rapido, and all these applications, also Swiggy. They all have an inbuilt map. But did they create their own map in their applications, or do they use the existing Google Maps in order to do that? Now, that is possible only through APIs. So Google Maps presents some APIs to other applications which they can use. Now, in order to understand APIs in detail, let's dig into this video and go to our screen. If we think about API, the API basically stands for Application Programming Interface. Now, what does this mean? Suppose this is our application. Any application will work. Let's say this is a movie application in which we have all the movies, plus we have all the ratings, all the reviews of the movie, like IMDb or something, okay, like Rotten Tomatoes or something. So we are already capturing all the details which includes a movie, like latest movie, latest hits of 2000, 2010, 2020, everything. Now, we already have this amount of data which is stored in our database, and our application is already working on that. Let's say now, in any other corner of the world, someone is trying to create one application based on the data which is already captured in this app. Now, they have two options. Either they can create their own engine like this, their own application, where they will again curate all the ratings, curate all the reviews, and curate all the data. But now, where are they going to curate this from? For this, every application leaves some endpoints which can be used by another application. Now, if for our application or for this developer application, if they want to use rating of some movie application, they can directly call the APIs of this application, and through which they will get the proper information which is required for them. Now, like this developer or this application don't have to create their own application for the task which has already been done. So they can use the application data directly. But again, can't we directly give access to our database? This can be dangerous, right? Because then this application again have to handle a lot of scenarios based on the database queries. Plus, they can also delete some important data in this database, which will affect the other applications which are using the same content. Also, there are some added functionalities. Let's say we are giving an option to write a review again. So in this, we have already handled that case through some or the other API. So instead of creating a new endpoint in this application, we can directly access the endpoint of the other application, which is going to take our review also. So in this case, this application saves a lot of time because they are using another application, the APIs of another application through which they are going to do the same work. Now, in this case, if this application wants to add some data into their database also, they can easily do this. So this is one use case of creating an API or using APIs of other application. Also, there can be a case where you're creating an application and in the backend, you are exposing the APIs which can be used by your front end. So front end can be a web application or even a mobile application. Can be both also. Let's say we are creating some backend, and from for the application, we are also creating front end, maybe using React or something, and backend using Swift or something. In both of these cases, these languages, the React and Swift, both are capable of handling APIs. So they don't care about which language did the backend use in order to provide them the API. They will directly call the APIs and use the information which they are trying to use. So this is another scenario where there are no two applications, there is only single application which is divided into front end and back end part and using the data which backend is providing. Again, in this case also, you can think that they will use the database directly, but it is restricted and prohibited for the security of data, which we have already discussed in the first case. So with this, we understand the core functionality or usage of the APIs. Number one is if we want to give access to some other application, and number two is if we want to give access of the endpoints or the APIs to our front end. Now, this both can also happen at the same time because it is up to us how do we want to expose our APIs. Some applications or some backend basically restrict the APIs to be used through their front end applications only. And if you want to make them open, you can make them open so that other application can also use the same API. Now, let's move forward to the type of APIs. The first type of API is called as REST API. If you are a developer, you already are using this. Also, if you are creating projects, you might already have created them or use them in your application. Now, REST basically stands for Representational State Transfer. REST is one of those APIs which you will see in most of the application nowadays because of its easiness, its structure, and its ability to easily maintain a large amount of data with low volume. So that's why we use REST. Mostly in REST, we use JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation, which is a way or a format through which we will send or retrieve the data. It is a easy to use format. That's why we are sticking with this for this today's video, and we are going to cover this in details in a minute. Also, we have some other types, that is SOAP. SOAP basically stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. This is also one way of handling the data across applications, across different platforms. And SOAP basically use XML formats in order to transfer the data. XMLs are replaced by JSON because XMLs were really bulky in nature, because in order to create every object or every array, we have to mention the attributes again and again, which is solved by JSON. So that's why we prefer JSON over XML any day in today's time. But the SOAP or the XML was famous back then. So that means there are a lot of applications which are still using XMLs. Why? Because there are legacy applications. They are built way earlier when JSON was introduced and still are using XML. So in legacy system, if the APIs are created and exposed using XML, that means in order to make our system work, we also need to know about XMLs so that we can integrate those APIs into our system. Also, you can use some middleware application where the data will be taken in the form of XML and will be converted into JSON, and your application can use that data afterwards. So that's why if you are working with a legacy system, it is preferred to understand the XMLs also so that you can convert them in JSON, or you can work them without converting them as well. So after SOAP, let's jump to the third one, which is GraphQL. So GraphQL is also used widely across many applications, many platforms. So the basic thing in GraphQL is GraphQL basically says that I'll provide a single endpoint, only a single endpoint, and based on that, you can send whichever query you want. So in FE, from FE side, we will not hit multiple endpoints, but we will send our request as a query. That's why the GraphQL stands for Graph Query Language. So GraphQL also have a query language that is similar to SQL. In SQL also we have multiple queries from which we can do our things. In this also, only one point is exposed as I told earlier, and using that only, the front end now can send multiple queries and access that particular endpoint and get the data which they want. So this is the core concept of GraphQL. So as I said, GraphQL is also present in our today's time also. So there can be a chance that you learning GraphQL and working on it. The other type of API is gRPC. Here, the RPC stands for Remote Procedural Calls, and for G, some may say that G stands for Google because it is created by Google, but it is GRCP, Remote Procedural Calls only. So instead of using XML and JSON, we have a new format here which is called protocol buffers. It is very much efficient than JSON and XML combined. So that means the size of protocol buffers are usually very small than XML or JSON. So that will enable the data to transfer faster. So because of this only, Google created this and uses this. So this is small in size and faster to transfer. In today's applications where we have microservices, right? So in microservices, this is our entire application, and let's say our applications is divided into multiple applications, which is combining the data of their endpoints through each other. Let's say these are the connections, and through this they are going to provide the actual API to the outer world. Now, for this communication between these microservices, we often use gRPC. Why? Because internally, at least, the communication should be faster to provide the relevant information in a low latency. This will also help us having multiple microservices and having various kind of communications between them before giving the actual data to the other application or the front end. Now let's jump to the last one in our list today, which is WebSockets. WebSockets are also used in today's time in today's application for various purposes. For every notifications, if we see, WebSockets are used. In order to maintain a chatting stream, WebSockets are used. Wherever you need some real-time connections, WebSockets are used. So its architecture is slightly different from the other services. In other services, front end or the other application will place some request to the application and then they will provide the response. But in WebSockets, whenever front end creates a request, a channel is created. Now, once the channel is established, then the conversation can be lead through backend also. Whereas in other forms, only front end or the other application which is trying to access the information, they send the request and get the request. But in this case, since the backend also can initiate the conversation, that means it can also send some or the other information by itself. Those information can be the chat or the notifications. which is very helpful for front end to get. Because if this channel is not there, the front end have to constantly ask the back end whether there are some new notifications or not, or whether the chat is there or not. But once the channel is maintained through WebSockets, it is easy to navigate message from backend to front end and front end to backend as well. With this, also, if you have played quizzes on our Telescope platform only, Telescope channel, in which you may see an application which Naveen sir presents in order to share the quiz with you all. You use that application in order to give the responses. Now, those responses or the marks are calculated based on the response time and the correctness of the answer. Now, those connections are also maintained through WebSockets. That's why you see many notifications or some GIF or something. So this is about WebSocket, and with this, I would like to conclude this session because it is going to be a long session, and it is better to understand these things in parts. So these are the most used five type of APIs which we have. Now, in order to understand them briefly, in the next video, I'm going to talk about RESTful APIs, in which we will discuss the various aspects or the in parts. So these are the most used five type of APIs which we have. Now, in order to understand them briefly, in the next video, I am going to talk about RESTful APIs, in which we will discuss the various aspects or the parts of the APIs and also see what are the recommendations and usage of those APIs. Now that we already know about RESTful APIs and all the other different type of APIs, it's time to deep dive into one of them. And for today's video, I have selected REST APIs to deep dive into. Why? Because it is the most used APIs across the world. It doesn't matter if you are starting a career or you are already seasoned, you have to work with RESTful APIs for sure. So let's move to the screen now. RESTful APIs are also known as REST APIs. As we know, it stands for Representational State Transfer. What does it mean? It means that REST is also one format through which we will transfer our data from one end to another end. What are these ends? We have discussed this already. Either we are giving some data from front end to back end or vice versa.